Hello and welcome back to Between the Hashes, our weekly college football prediction show. Coming to you from Los Angeles, California, I'm your host, Matt Keim, and today we're going to be taking a trip out to the Pacific Northwest to visit two of the more surprising success stories of the year. The undefeated UCLA Bruins, led by Chip Kelly, and the Oregon Ducks, a team that we all kind of left for dead. The Pac-12 is a conference that honestly just fascinates me because I genuinely don't know who's going to win it. There's so much noise around the LA schools and that we all kind of just forgot about Oregon. So let's take a look at Oregon for a moment. They got steamrolled in the opener against Georgia. Oregon was completely outmatched, and it was very, very obvious from the start. Bo Nix had one of the worst games of his career, which is kind of a common theme for whenever he played against Georgia if you followed him in his Auburn days. And we all kind of collectively forgot about Oregon ever since then. But to Oregon's credit, they did not roll over and die for the rest of the season. Since then, they've ripped off 5 straight wins at an average margin of victory of 25 points a game. In fairness, one of those wins was over an FCS team, but even if you take that away, the average only falls down to about 22 points a game in terms of average margin of victory, and so they have been playing, and they've been playing well. Now, granted, the schedule has gotten way easier since Georgia, but my statement stands. They've rebounded, and they have been doing well. And this is kind of a rebuilding season for Oregon. They lost a number of transfers when Coach Mario Cristobal left to go to Miami. People weren't quite sure what to make of Dan Lanning up there, and people weren't quite sure what to make of Bo Nix, a quarterback who I actually kind of ironic that he's even quarterbacking Oregon, given that Oregon was the team he beat in his first ever collegiate start when he was back at Auburn. But back at Auburn, he was known for making unbelievably athletic plays or just collapsing. There was a remarkable level of inconsistency that you'd see with him. But this year, ever since the Georgia game, he's been playing really, really well. He has thrown for 12 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and is responsible for 8 more touchdowns on rushing. He's responsible for 20 touchdowns in 6 games. And this team is averaging 42 points a game. So they have rebounded in a very nice way. They're playing at home, they're fired up, they're ready to go, and they have a sneaky good chance to win the Pac-12. Now, a quick reminder about the Pac-12. They did away with their divisions, and so it's just whomever has the best conference record, the 2 best conference records, will play each other in the conference title game this year. And that's a model that we might see going forward with some of the other conferences, especially as they start to expand. But that's a different story for a different time. Now, Oregon's weak point is its defense. They're giving up 28.8 points per game. It ranks about 50th. It's a matchup that I'd be very, very, very concerned about if I were a Ducks fan. Despite the debacle at Oregon, the Dan Lanning era has gotten off to a promising start, and they seek to continue that by trying to upset one of the heralded LA schools. UCLA is another team that's kind of flown under the radar this year. They share a city with another school, USC, that gets way more national attention, but honestly just has a way deeper pedigree in terms of football, at least. And so USC is the one taking all the attention, especially with the arrival of Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley and company. And even though USC got upset last week, they're still very much in the mix, and they're still going to be talked about as having been in the mix. But one of the reasons why UCLA is so kind of underrated, the Chip Kelly era has kind of gotten off to an uneven start. He's been there for a few years now, and while he's a good coach and he's been recruiting well, especially for UCLA standards, it's been taking, I think, longer than some of the administration and fan base would like, but their patience may be rewarded this year. UCLA is helmed at quarterback by Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I will refer to as DTR for the rest of the video. DTR is responsible for 15 passing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns. He's been their full-time starter since 2019. He is one of the COVID senior year. Quick reminder, the NCAA granted waivers to anybody playing during the 2020 season just because of how uneven and off-kilter things were, that year would not count against anybody's eligibility. And so this leads to a situation where you have guys probably won't play in the NFL, but they're decent college players and they're going to stay at their college for an extra year. So you're getting guys that would have been gone in 3 or 4 years that are staying 4 or 5 and even 6 years if they redshirted. DTR is one such case where he is returned. He has been at UCLA since 2018, so it's been a long time. And he's been a starter there for a very long time. And so he's just super experienced. But it's not just him. For UCLA's offense, there are 16 upperclassmen on the 2 deep. There are 14 on their defense that are upperclassmen on the 2 deep. And so this is a very, very, very experienced team. This is kind of like UCLA's year where they kind of have to make it or break it, because they're going to be a very young team and they're going to be rebuilding quite a lot of pieces next year. But DTR is one of the leaders in the Heisman PAC right now. He's well behind Hendon Hooker and CJ Stroud, but he's usually the 3rd or 4th name that you hear there, and he's been backing it up with his play. So the ultimate question that we face is, can Chip Kelly's experienced squad get it done, or can Dan Lanning's resilient squad take the game? Well, what does Vegas say? Vegas has Oregon favored by 6 as of the time of this recording, and I don't know, like anything with the Pac-12, a lot of the games I've gotten wrong in my predictions this year have either been Pac-12 or Big 12 games, just because there's a lot of teams at the top that I think could beat each other on any given day, and this is one of those cases. Do we get good Bo Nix or bad Bo Nix? And it's not like UCLA's defense is that much better than Oregon's to where it's going to make a drastic difference, especially when Oregon's playing at home. And it's not like Autzen is an easy place to go into in play. That said, I think I trust UCLA in that squad just a little bit more than Oregon. So I'm going to do a soft lean of UCLA winning outright. I'm very, very uncertain about this whole pick. So my guess is UCLA wins outright, and DTR continues UCLA's march towards a date with USC. This very much has like a 45-41 type of game feel to it. Okay, it's time for a lightning round. Like last week, there's actually a lot of ranked matchups this week, and I want to talk about them. Mississippi State at Alabama. Mississippi State is coming off of an upset loss to Kentucky, a game that I was totally wrong about, and they're playing an Alabama team that is coming off of a devastating loss against Tennessee, their first time losing to that team in 15 years. I have a very hard time seeing a Nick Saban coached Alabama team lose to 2 games in a row, especially since Alabama's playing in Tuscaloosa. Alabama wins. Kansas State at TCU, 2 of the top teams in the Big 12 match up again, and this is yet another high-stakes game in the Big 12. This conference is crazy this year. And Kansas State's sole loss up to this point is to a Tulane team that is now ranked, surprisingly enough. I think TCU keeps its momentum, especially because they're playing at home. I still trust Max Duggan, even though they looked uneven at times against Oklahoma State. I think TCU takes the win yet again. Okay, next up, Texas at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's defense isn't quite what we thought it would be this year, and Spencer Sanders has been dealing with some lingering shoulder concerns. And even though Texas looked pretty bad against a bad Iowa State team, I'm going to lean Texas here. Syracuse at Clemson. The 2 remaining undefeated teams in the ACC are playing each other. I think Clemson wins just because I don't think anybody's on Clemson's level talent-wise that can push them in that conference, and that includes Syracuse. Okay, so that brings us to our underrated game of the week. I think it might be cheating to choose an SEC West matchup, let alone one involving a top 10 team, but I want to talk about Ole Miss, because they are one of many, many, many teams starting a transfer quarterback this year with a former USC gunslinger in Jackson Dart, and he's been amazing under Lane Kiffin. That said, they're only favored by 1.5 in all the lines against LSU, and LSU's coming off of a good win against Florida, but they're just kind of uneven. They'll get blasted by Tennessee and then turn around and beat a decent Florida team, and it's just, I don't quite know what to expect. They're playing at home, and Death Valley's always a hard place to play, and this kind of feels like the game that Ole Miss would trip up before playing somebody like Alabama, but I think Ole Miss gets the win here just because Ole Miss's defense, surprisingly, despite the fact that Lane Kiffin's calling card in recent years has been a lightning-paced offense, the defense has been winning Ole Miss a lot of games this year. Just look at their Kentucky contest for proof of this. And so I think Ole Miss goes into Death Valley and gets a very, very hard-fought but very close win. It would not shock me to see LSU win here, but I think Ole Miss wins and seeks to usurp Alabama's position in the West. Well, that's all I have for you guys this week. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill by now. And remember to subscribe for updates on the Washington Commanders with the John Keim Report. Remember to follow us especially now that hockey season is open, with All's Caps hosted by former Capitals defenseman Carl Alsner and AP hockey writer Steve Wino. Follow all that and more on Empire Media on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, that's Empire Media, AMPIRE Media. And thanks, and enjoy the games.